On an ordinary day in a quiet town, a boy named Malik was walking home from school. His backpack, worn from years of use, bounced lightly against his back as he moved through the sunlit streets. It wasn't a typical sunny day. There was a faint chill in the air, signaling the approach of winter, but Malik felt energized. His mind was occupied with thoughts of his family and the small, humble dreams that kept him going. He wanted to make something of himself, to escape the limitations of his small town. His mother worked tirelessly at a local diner, and his father, though present, was rarely home. Life was hard for them, and Malik had learned early on that nothing came easy. But he had an undeniable drive, a drive to push through the struggles and create something better for himself. That day, like most days, he had stayed after school to help out with a few extra projects, hoping to make his teachers proud. He knew that his education was his ticket out. As he turned the corner onto the familiar street that led to his home, he noticed something unusual. A shiny black luxury car sat idling on the side of the road, the engine quietly humming. It wasn't the kind of car that belonged in this neighborhood, far too expensive for someone in Malik's circle. He paused, glancing at the car, its sleek design a stark contrast to the faded houses around it. A man, in a sharp business suit, stood next to the car, his hands clasped together in frustration as he looked under the hood. Malik was a curious kid, never one to shy away from helping, but today there was something different in the air. He stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do. He could keep walking home, like any other day, and let the man figure things out. But something in the man's posture, the way he was pacing back and forth, told Malik that he might need help. And without thinking too much, Malik walked up to him. "Hey, you need a hand with something?" Malik asked, his voice quiet but sincere. The man looked up, startled. His eyes briefly scanned Malik from head to toe before landing on his face. The boy's clothes were nothing special, a faded jacket, jeans that had seen better days, and a pair of sneakers that had more wear than shine. But there was a certain warmth to his expression that made the millionaire pause. Actually, yeah," the man replied, his voice carrying the slight edge of frustration. "I can't get the car to start, and I'm not sure what's wrong. The battery's fine, but maybe the alternator." Malik nodded. He wasn't a mechanic, but he had helped out his mom when her old car had given her trouble. He knew enough to give it a shot. "I can help you push it to the side of the road, at least. Maybe give it a little nudge so you're not blocking traffic." The man studied him for a moment before nodding. "All right. I'm David," he said, offering a hand. "Malik," the boy replied, shaking his hand. David smiled, but there was still a hint of stress behind his eyes. Malik could see the tension in his posture as they both began to push the car. It was heavy, far heavier than it seemed from a distance, and Malik had to dig deep to push it at all. He could feel the burn in his arms, but he didn't want to stop. David was no help. His polished shoes and expensive suit were more of an obstacle than anything. But Malik didn't mind. He was used to hard work. He was used to doing things on his own. As they managed to get the car out of the way, David seemed to relax a bit. He wiped his brow and gave Malik a tired but grateful smile. "I really appreciate it, Malik. I don't know what I would have done without you. I was just about to call a tow truck, but this saves me time." "No problem," Malik said with a shrug, feeling a bit awkward but glad to have helped. "You'd have probably had to wait a while for that tow truck anyway." David nodded. "You're right. I've been here for almost an hour already." He hesitated for a moment, as if considering something, before adding, "It's rare that people offer help like that. You don't see a lot of that these days." Malik shrugged again, but his thoughts were already drifting. He didn't think about the car or the suit. He just did what felt right. "Guess you just have to look out for each other." David seemed to pause at that, considering Malik's words carefully. He studied the boy for a moment, as if seeing something in him that he hadn't expected. Finally, he spoke. "I've been lucky. I've made my share of mistakes, But I've also made a lot of good choices. It's how I got here." Malik didn't respond immediately. The man seemed so distant. He didn't have time to think about David's life, though. His own world was complicated enough as it was. But something about the conversation felt significant, like a door opening to a world he knew nothing about. "Well, I'll let you get to it," Malik said, his feet beginning to shift restlessly. "Good luck with the car." David raised an eyebrow, a bit surprised. "Are you sure you don't need anything? I can give you a ride to wherever you're headed." Malik's first instinct was to refuse. He didn't need rides or handouts, especially from someone like this. But then he hesitated. The thought of turning down kindness when it was offered didn't sit right. Still, he was cautious. "I'm good, just trying to get home." David seemed to accept that and smiled. "All right, but listen, Malik, if you ever need anything, don't hesitate to reach out. You helped me out today, and I don't forget that kind of thing." Before Malik could respond, David waved goodbye and got into his car, leaving Malik standing on the sidewalk, watching the luxury vehicle drive off into the distance. It wasn't until he reached home that evening that the strange encounter really started to settle in. As he walked inside, his mind raced with thoughts of the man, his car, and the odd feeling that something had shifted in him that day. He couldn't explain it, but a sense of anticipation lingered in the air. Little did Malik know, this was the beginning of something that would change everything. The following day, Malik woke up to a world that seemed unchanged, yet everything about it felt different. The morning sun cast soft light over the modest home he shared with his family, but the air felt charged with a sense of something he couldn't quite grasp. As he made his way downstairs, the same creaky steps, the familiar smell of his mom's coffee, and the usual bustle of getting ready for school were all there, but today they seemed distant. It was as if something had shifted in him overnight, even though he couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was. He quickly ate a bowl of cereal while his mom hurriedly prepared her things for work. The usual routine. He'd finish his breakfast, grab his things, and head out to school. But this time, his mind kept drifting back to the encounter with David the day before. He couldn't stop replaying the brief conversation in his mind, wondering what had made the millionaire so different. There was an unmistakable respect in the way David had looked at him, almost like he'd seen something in Malik that no one else had. "Malik," his mother called out, snapping him out of his thoughts. "Hurry up, or you'll miss the bus again." Malik nodded absent-mindedly and grabbed his backpack, stuffing a few books inside before rushing out the door. The bus ride was typical. No one paid him much mind, and he was more than used to the chatter of classmates around him. But for some reason, today, the chatter seemed to fall away as his thoughts remained focused on that strange meeting with David. At school, the hours dragged on. The lessons felt unimportant, and Malik's mind was a million miles away. During lunch, his friends gathered around the cafeteria table, talking about video games, sports, and girls, but Malik barely heard them. His mind kept drifting back to the idea that someone like David, a successful businessman, a person who seemed so far removed from his world, had shown genuine interest in a kid like him. The thought was both foreign and intoxicating. He wasn't used to people like that even acknowledging his existence, let alone thanking him for something as simple as offering a helping hand. Later in the afternoon, as Malik walked home, he couldn't shake the feeling that his encounter with David had been more than just a random moment. It had meant something, he just didn't know what yet. He reached the same corner where he had seen the broken-down car yesterday, and as he passed by, a sleek black SUV caught his eye. He didn't think much of it at first. There were plenty of expensive cars in this town, but this one looked oddly familiar. It was a deep, glossy black, with tinted windows that gave it an air of mystery. But then he noticed the familiar logo, the same luxury brand as the car David had been driving the day before. His heart skipped a beat. No way. Malik hesitated, his feet stopping instinctively. The SUV was parked on the same side of the road, just a few houses down from his. His mind raced, but he couldn't quite make sense of it. Was it just a coincidence? Was it someone else with the same car? As he approached, the door to the SUV opened, and to Malik's astonishment, David stepped out. He was dressed in a different suit, but there was no mistaking it. This was the same man. The same millionaire. The same person who had been stranded on the side of the road just the day before. David spotted Malik almost immediately. His face lit up with a smile, and he waved. "Malik. Hey, how's it going?" Malik stood frozen, unsure what to say. Hey David," he replied cautiously. "What are you doing here?" David chuckled, walking toward him with an easy confidence. "I thought I'd stop by. You didn't think I forgot about our conversation, did you?" Malik's mind spun, and a tinge of unease crept up his spine. "I didn't. I didn't expect you to come by. Is everything okay?" "Oh, everything's fine," David replied, his eyes twinkling with a mix of amusement and something else, something more serious. "But I wanted to do something for you, Malik. You helped me out yesterday, and I don't forget kindness like that." He stepped toward the back of the SUV and opened the trunk, revealing something that made Malik's stomach twist in disbelief. Inside, there was a set of keys and a glossy red ribbon. Malik took a step back. "What is this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. David smiled. "It's a gift, Malik. I want to give you a car. You've earned it." Malik blinked, trying to process the words that were coming out of David's mouth. A car. A gift. To him, the thought was absurd. He had never in his life imagined that something like this would ever happen to him. Cars like the one David was offering were meant for people with money, people with power, certainly not for a kid like him. I don't think I can accept that," Malik said, shaking his head in disbelief. "I didn't help you yesterday for anything in return." David's smile softened, but there was a look in his eyes that made Malik pause. "I understand, Malik, but this isn't about me or what you did for me. It's about you. You have a good heart. I've been around a lot of people who don't even know what that is. But you do. I'm just paying it forward." Malik felt the weight of the moment, the immense pressure of the decision. On one hand, the idea of owning a car, especially one like this, was a dream come true. It was everything he had ever wanted, a way out of the struggles he had always known. But on the other hand, it felt wrong. It felt too much like charity, like something he didn't deserve, something that would come with strings attached. He had never been one to accept handouts, no matter how generous. "I don't know," Malik said, voice shaking slightly. "I just don't think I can. It's too much." David nodded, understanding. "I get it. But think about it, Malik. This is your chance. You've got potential. You don't have to stay stuck here. I see something in you, and I want to help you get where you're meant to be." For a long moment, Malik didn't know what to say. He felt his heart race as he weighed the options in his mind. Could he take this gift and still remain true to himself? Was it okay to accept something this big from a complete stranger? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Malik spoke. "I'll think about it." David's face broke into a grin, and he handed Malik the keys. "Take your time. But don't wait too long, all right? You deserve this." With that, he turned and got back into the SUV, leaving Malik standing there, holding the keys. The weight of the situation hit him all at once. This wasn't just a gift. It was a decision that could change everything. But was he ready to let it? Could he handle the consequences of accepting something so life-altering? Malik stood there, staring at the keys in his hand, unsure of what the future held. The next day, the reality of what had happened slowly sank in, and Malik couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to take a turn he wasn't quite ready for. He had never been the type of person to rely on others, let alone accept extravagant gifts. But here he was, standing on the precipice of something that could change everything. The keys to the black SUV sat on his dresser, gleaming in the early morning light, a constant reminder of the decision he had to make. His mother had noticed them as soon as she entered his room to wake him up, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Malik," she had said, her voice trembling with disbelief. "Where did you get these?" The way she asked it made him feel both guilty and overwhelmed. "David, the man I helped yesterday," he explained, though the words didn't feel real coming out of his mouth. "He gave them to me." His mother had gone quiet for a long moment, as if processing the sheer absurdity of what he was saying. Finally, she exhaled sharply. "I don't know, Malik. This feels wrong. Why would he do that? What does he want in return?" Malik had no answers for her. He didn't know David that well, just a brief conversation and a shared moment of struggle. The boy in him wanted to reject the idea outright, but a part of him, the part that had always wanted more, was drawn to the thought of what a car like that could do for him. A car meant freedom. It meant opportunity. It meant that for once, he wouldn't have to rely on his worn-out shoes and the bus schedules that never seemed to sync with his life. But that was the dilemma. The offer felt too big, too generous. Like it came with a hidden cost, one that he wasn't prepared to pay. His mind raced as he tried to figure out what David really wanted from him. He hadn't asked for anything in return, but that didn't mean there wasn't something he expected. Something unspoken, something that would demand more than Malik could give. As he made his way to school, the weight of the decision pressed on him. The ride was uneventful, but every passing minute seemed to heighten his sense of confusion. Everyone around him went about their day as if it were just another Tuesday, but Malik couldn't escape the feeling that his world had been tilted off its axis. He tried to focus on the classroom discussions, but his thoughts kept drifting to the car and the strange man who had given it to him. When school let out, Malik found himself walking home, as usual. But this time, instead of heading straight for his house, he found his feet taking him back to the same street where David had met him the day before. The SUV wasn't there, but the memory of it. The smooth black exterior, the way it had gleamed in the sunlight, lingered in his mind like a dream he couldn't shake. Malik felt conflicted. He had never been one to trust people easily, especially not people like David. People who had so much, people who moved in worlds he didn't understand. Yet there was something about David, something in the way he spoke, the way he had looked at Malik with genuine appreciation, that made it hard to dismiss him completely. He wasn't a billionaire trying to use his wealth to manipulate others. At least, that was the impression Malik had gotten. He had offered something that felt real, something rooted in kindness. But in a world that often rewarded the wrong people, could Malik trust that? Or was it all part of a bigger game, one that he couldn't see yet? The thought gnawed at him as he continued down the street. By the time he reached home, the decision was still unclear. He wanted to talk to his mom about it, but she seemed so resolute in her distrust. She had always warned him about people who offered things that seemed too good to be true, people who had hidden agendas. And maybe she was right. Maybe David wasn't as sincere as he appeared. But then again, maybe this was an opportunity that didn't come along every day. That night, as Malik lay in bed, the sound of his mother's tired footsteps echoing through the house, he couldn't stop thinking about what David had said. The millionaire had mentioned seeing potential in him. But what did that mean? What kind of potential was David talking about? Could a car really change his life, or was it just a temporary fix, a shiny object that would ultimately lead to more problems than solutions? He didn't have answers, and the longer he lay there, the more restless he became. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, and he groggily reached over to check it. It was a message from his best friend, Kyrell. "Yo, you good? Heard about the car. What's up with that?" Malik stared at the message for a long moment before replying. "I don't know, man. I don't know if it's right." Tyrell's reply came almost instantly. "Bro, it's a car. It's like a dream come true. Why wouldn't you take it?" "I don't know. Something about it feels off. I don't want to owe anybody anything." There was a brief pause before Tyrell answered. "Look, Malik. You helped him. He's just showing appreciation. This could be your chance. Don't let fear hold you back." Malik stared at the screen, his thumb hovering over the keys. His friend made a good point. Maybe he was overthinking it. Maybe this wasn't a trap. Maybe David just wanted to give him a leg up. But deep down, Malik knew that accepting the car would be more than just accepting a gift. It would be a step into a world that he wasn't sure he was ready for. He had seen too many people chase after dreams that didn't belong to them. And now, here he was, standing on the edge of a dream he wasn't sure he even wanted. The next morning, Malik woke up with a clearer sense of resolve. He had spent the night thinking, talking with Tyrell, and going over the pros and cons in his mind. Today, he would go back to David. He wasn't going to let fear or uncertainty control him. If David truly wanted to help him, then maybe it was time to take a chance. After all, how often did someone offer you the opportunity to change your life? Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. As Malik stepped outside, he found himself walking toward the black SUV once again. But this time, it wasn't just the gleaming exterior that caught his eye. It was the realization that he was about to make a decision that could define his future. He didn't know where this path would lead, but for the first time in a long while, Malik felt like he might be ready to take the first step. The only question now was whether he could live with the consequences. The days that followed were a blur of conflicting emotions, but Malik couldn't shake the nagging feeling in his chest that something big was on the horizon. He had accepted the gift, the keys to the sleek black SUV, and although he told himself that it was a step forward, it felt more like an invitation to a world he didn't understand, one that was vastly different from the life he had known. When he drove the car for the first time, the power of the engine beneath him was intoxicating. The leather seats felt like they belonged to someone else, someone important. For the first time, Malik felt what it was like to step into a world of privilege, even if only for a moment. It was like a door had opened to a future he had always dreamed about, and yet, a part of him couldn't help but feel disconnected from it. His friends at school noticed the change immediately. Tyrell was the first to approach him. "Man, you actually did it. You got the car," he exclaimed, eyes wide with disbelief. Malik could tell Tyrell was excited, but there was also a hint of skepticism in his voice. Malik could see the wheels turning in his friend's mind as he processed the news. "How'd you manage to swing that? A car like that? Something's fishy here, Malik." "I don't know, man," Malik said, feeling the weight of Tyrell's words. It's not what I thought it would be. I mean, it's great and all, but I'm not sure I really deserve it." "Deserve it?" Tyrell shook his head. "Bro, you helped the guy. You earned it. That's how the world works. People who deserve something get it." Malik didn't respond, feeling a sense of unease settle deep inside him. He couldn't ignore the fact that the car, this gift, seemed too good to be true. It wasn't just a car. It was a symbol. It was a connection to something bigger, something outside of his reach. Malik had always tried to avoid anything that might complicate his life further, but here he was, stuck in a situation where everything was about to change. And that was just the beginning. Over the next few days, Malik's newfound status as the kid with the expensive SUV spread throughout the school. He noticed the subtle shift in how people interacted with him. Classmates who had barely acknowledged his existence now sought him out for small talk or to offer praise for his good fortune. It wasn't long before whispers started circulating. Some people were impressed, others were envious, and a few were downright suspicious. It was one thing for Malik to have the car. It was another to have it so suddenly, with no apparent strings attached. At home, Malik's mother didn't know what to think. She had tried to maintain an air of support, but Malik could tell she was struggling to understand why David had given him the SUV. She asked questions, not in an accusatory tone, but with a certain anxiety that only a mother could have. "Are you sure this isn't some kind of a deal?" she asked one evening, her hands shaking slightly as she set down the dishes. "I mean, I don't want you to get caught up in something you can't control." Malik could see the concern in her eyes. It wasn't just about the car. It was about the unknowns that came with it. She wasn't a fool. She understood that nothing in life came for free. "I don't know, Mom," Malik answered honestly. "It's like he just wanted to help me, and I'm not sure how to feel about it." His mom sighed deeply, rubbing her forehead. "Just be careful, Malik. People who have everything don't usually give things away for nothing." Malik nodded, but deep down, a part of him didn't want to believe that David's intentions were anything but genuine. The man had been kind, had shown a level of appreciation for something as simple as helping him push a car. But the world didn't always work that way. The world was complicated, and Malik had learned that lesson the hard way. Things started to spiral more quickly than he could have anticipated. The car had drawn the attention of more than just his classmates. It seemed like everyone in the town had noticed the change. Neighbors whispered when they saw Malik pull into his driveway. Some gave him nods of approval, others simply stared. He was no longer the quiet, unassuming kid walking home from school. He was the boy with the black SUV, and with that came a new kind of attention. Attention that he didn't know how to handle. It wasn't long before Malik started receiving messages from David. At first, they were friendly. Texts checking in on how he was doing, making sure everything was going well with the car. But soon, the messages began to feel more like subtle hints that Malik couldn't quite put his finger on. David would text, asking how Malik was adjusting to the new car, then casually mentioning a project he was working on, something that could be a big opportunity. At first, Malik dismissed it as nothing more than small talk, but as the messages grew more frequent, he began to wonder if there was more to it than David was letting on. One evening, as Malik was sitting alone in his room, he received a text from David that made his heart race. "I'm working on a new venture. It's something big, Malik, and I think you're the kind of person who could really help. We could make a real difference together. Let's meet tomorrow and talk about it." Malik felt a rush of anxiety wash over him. What was David offering? What was the catch? The text seemed too calculated, too precise. The words felt like they had been carefully crafted, like part of a bigger plan. David had been kind, but now Malik couldn't shake the feeling that he was being pulled into something that he didn't fully understand. The next day, he met David at a downtown cafe, a trendy spot with polished floors and expensive coffee. As soon as Malik walked in, he spotted David sitting in a corner booth, his expensive watch glinting in the light. The businessman smiled when he saw Malik, his expression warm and welcoming. "Malik," David greeted him, gesturing for him to sit. "Glad you could make it." Malik sat down, feeling a knot form in his stomach. He didn't know what to expect, but he knew it was important. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "Listen," David began, leaning in slightly. "I've been watching you, and I think you've got potential. This venture I'm working on, it's big, and I want you to be a part of it. There's a lot of money at stake, and if you're willing to come on board, I can make sure you're well taken care of." Malik's pulse quickened. "What kind of venture?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. David leaned back in his seat, his hands folded in front of him. "A real estate project. We're talking big investments, properties, developments. You could have a stake in it, and if you play your cards right, this could change everything for you. All you have to do is help me out a little. Nothing too complicated." Malik's mind raced. The words sounded too good to be true. Real estate. Money. It was the kind of dream he'd always imagined for himself, but now it felt like a trap, like something that would come with strings attached. "I don't know, David," Malik said slowly, trying to hide the growing unease in his chest. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for something like this." David's smile didn't falter. "You'd be surprised what you're capable of, Malik. The question is, are you willing to take a chance?" Malik looked down at the table, his hands clenched into fists. This was the moment where everything could change. But was he ready to take that step? Could he trust David? Or was this all part of a bigger game? The decision was his, but the consequences would affect more than just his future. The weight of it all pressed down on him, and for the first time, Malik wasn't sure where the right path lay. The days after the meeting with David were a whirlwind of confusion and anxiety for Malik. Every time he tried to focus on something else, his mind kept returning to that cafe, to the conversation with the millionaire, and the words that hung in the air between them like an unspoken agreement. "Are you willing to take a chance?" David had asked, and Malik couldn't shake the feeling that his answer would determine more than just his future. It was as though David was offering him a key to a door, but Malik couldn't see what lay beyond it. His life had already changed. The SUV was a constant reminder of that. Everywhere he went, people looked at him differently. He could no longer just blend in. He was now the boy with the car, the boy whose life was somehow tied to a millionaire's generosity. But Malik knew that nothing in life was ever free. He had learned that lesson over and over again, from his mother's struggle to make ends meet, from the way the world seemed to chew people up and spit them out. The idea that David's offer of partnership was pure kindness seemed naive at best, dangerous at worst. There was something about the whole situation that didn't sit right with him. Despite the nagging feeling in the back of his mind, Malik decided to visit David's office the next day. The invitation was clear. David had mentioned meeting again to discuss the project, to lay out what it would take to be a part of the venture. Malik had spent the night lying awake, turning the offer over in his mind, but he couldn't shake the feeling that if he turned it down, he might be giving up something important. This could be his chance to change everything. But at what cost? David's office was just as impressive as the man himself, a high-rise building in the heart of downtown, overlooking the city like some kind of fortress of success. Malik had never been inside a place like this, and it felt like stepping into another world. The sleek, modern furnishings, the polished floors, the walls lined with glass that looked out over the city. Everything screamed power, success, wealth. Malik stood in the lobby for a moment, unsure of himself, before the receptionist smiled at him and directed him toward the elevator. As the doors slid shut, Malik felt the sudden weight of the decision pressing on him again. This wasn't just a casual meeting. This was the beginning of something that could either lift him up or break him down. David greeted him warmly when he arrived at his office, offering him a seat and a drink. The smile was the same as it had been the day before, a mixture of confidence and something more. "I'm glad you could make it," David said, his voice smooth and assured. "This is a big step, Malik. I hope you're ready." Malik sat down, trying to steady his nerves. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said," he began, his voice a little quieter than he intended. "The real estate thing, it sounds huge. But I still don't know exactly what I'm getting into. I don't know if I'm the right person for this." David smiled, a knowing glint in his eye. "That's the thing, Malik. You don't have to be an expert. I'll guide you. I just need someone who has the drive, who's willing to take a chance. This could change your life." For a moment, Malik was tempted. He had seen what people with drive could do. He had seen the people who made it big, the ones who lived in mansions and drove cars like the one parked outside. The idea of escaping his old life, of stepping into that world of power and wealth, was undeniably appealing. But the more David spoke, the more Malik felt something unsettling in the pit of his stomach. There was something too slick about David's words, too rehearsed. He had heard it all before, the talk of big opportunities, of dreams coming true. But this time, something was different. It wasn't just talk, it was a transaction. "I'm not sure I'm ready to just jump in," Malik said, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "I don't want to make a decision I'll regret." David leaned forward slightly, his tone turning more serious. "Listen, Malik, I'm offering you a chance to get ahead, to leave all of this behind." He gestured to the windows, The city sprawled out beneath them. To change your life. But I can't do it alone. I need someone who's willing to take a risk, someone who's not afraid to make something of themselves. Malik felt the pressure mounting. The temptation was there, pulling at him with every word. It would be so easy to accept, so easy to step into that world of success, to join David in whatever venture he had planned. He could picture it already. The respect, the money, the life he had always dreamed of. But then the doubt crept in, like a voice in the back of his mind warning him not to jump without knowing what was on the other side. I don't know, Malik said, his voice quieter this time. It just feels like there's something more to this than what you're saying. You've been kind, but I need to know what's really going on here. What am I actually getting into? David's eyes darkened, just for a split second, before his smile returned. Malik, you're a smart kid. I knew you would ask these questions. But let me tell you something. Nothing in life is handed to you without strings attached. There's always a price, even if you don't see it at first. What I'm offering you is a way out of everything that's holding you back. A way up. For the first time, Malik felt the weight of the strings David had mentioned. He had spent so much time focusing on the opportunity that he hadn't considered what David might expect in return. Was it truly just help with a business venture, or was there more to it? The thought made his stomach churn. He had always been wary of people who wanted something from him, people who acted as though kindness was a transaction. And now, here he was, being offered the very thing he had always wanted. But at what cost? As the meeting came to an end, Malik stood up, his mind racing. David shook his hand firmly. "Take your time," he said, his tone casual, but there was a hint of something more beneath it. "But remember, opportunities like this don't come around often. I won't be here forever. When you're ready to take the plunge, I'll be waiting." Malik walked out of the office feeling like he had just been caught in the middle of something far bigger than he was prepared for. The weight of the decision hung over him, like a storm cloud that refused to dissipate. He didn't know if he was ready to walk away from the chance to change his life. But he also didn't know if he could trust David. The man had given him the SUV, but now he was asking for something else, something more personal. And Malik wasn't sure if he was willing to pay that price. As he stepped into the elevator, the doors sliding shut behind him, he couldn't help but wonder. Was this his chance to break free from everything he had known? Or was he about to step into a trap from which there would be no escape? The world outside seemed to shimmer with possibility, but the darkness at the edges of that world, David's world, felt like it was waiting to swallow him whole. And now Malik had to decide whether he was willing to take that risk. The days following the meeting with David felt like an endless loop of confusion and tension. Malik's mind was a storm of doubts and what-ifs, each thought crashing into the next, leaving him no closer to understanding what path he should take. He tried to focus on school, but the weight of the decision pressed on him relentlessly. Every class, every conversation, felt like it was happening in a distant world that no longer made sense to him. The reality of his life, his family, his friends, the quiet town he had grown up in, felt increasingly small, overshadowed by the enormous opportunity David had dangled in front of him. The black SUV sat in his driveway, a reminder of the offer he had accepted, a symbol of the new world he was being drawn into. It seemed to whisper to him with every passing day, its polished exterior gleaming in the sunlight, mocking the uncertainty he felt inside. At night, he would sit in his room, staring at the keys on his dresser, wondering if accepting them had been a mistake. But he couldn't shake the feeling that turning back would mean losing everything. His chance at a better life, his escape from the struggles that had defined his existence up until now. Malik had always prided himself on being self-sufficient, on not relying on others. But this offer, this business deal, was more than just a question of money. It was a question of who he was, who he wanted to become. Could he really turn down the chance to change everything? Could he walk away from a future where anything was possible? Or would he be condemned to remain the same, stuck in the cycle that had defined his life? The pressure from all sides only grew heavier. At school, the whispers intensified. His classmates were fascinated by the car, by the story of how he had come into possession of it. Some were envious, others curious, but all of them treated him differently. It wasn't just the car, it was the way people looked at him now, like he had suddenly become someone important, someone to be reckoned with. Tyrell, his best friend, had been one of the few who hadn't changed his attitude toward him, but even Tyrell seemed caught up in the excitement of it all. "You're gonna make it, Malik," Tyrell kept saying, his words full of belief and anticipation. "This is your shot, man. Don't mess it up." But Malik couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something was off, something he couldn't put his finger on. David's offer seemed too good to be true, and Malik had learned long ago that nothing in life came without a price. Every time he saw the millionaire, every time they spoke, it felt as though there was a hidden agenda beneath the surface. David's charm, his smooth talk, his insistence that Malik was destined for something greater, it all felt like part of a larger game, one that Malik wasn't sure he wanted to play. It was late one evening when Malik finally made the decision. He couldn't live in this state of limbo anymore. He needed answers, needed to know if he was making the right choice. So he texted David, "I'm ready to meet. Let's talk about the project. I want to understand what I'm getting into." David's response was immediate. "Great. Meet me tomorrow at the office. I'll walk you through everything." The next day, Malik arrived at David's office, his stomach a tangled mess of nerves. The building, with its cold glass and steel, felt even more imposing than before. He had been here several times already, but each visit seemed to bring him deeper into a world that felt less like a place of opportunity and more like a labyrinth he couldn't escape. As he stepped into the elevator and watched the floors tick by, his heart raced, and for the first time, he wondered if he was making a mistake. Was he really ready to step into a life that required him to leave everything he had known behind? David greeted him with the same practiced smile, his hand extended in a friendly gesture, but there was something different in the air this time. The usual warmth in David's voice seemed colder, more calculated. "Malik," he said, his tone smooth, "I'm glad you're here. I know you've been thinking about this, and I want to be clear. This is a huge opportunity. A chance to get in on the ground floor of something that could make you a lot of money." Malik nodded, trying to keep his composure, but inside, his mind was spinning. "I've been thinking a lot about it, yeah, but I need to know what this is really about. What's the catch, David? What do you want from me?" David paused for a moment, then leaned forward, his voice lowering, as though he were about to share some grand secret. "The catch, Malik, is that success doesn't come without risk, but the reward is worth it. What I'm offering you isn't just money. It's a chance to build something that lasts, something that could change your life. You'll be part of something big, something you could never achieve on your own. And trust me, the people who succeed in this business, they don't get there by playing it safe." Malik felt a chill run down his spine. There it was again, the implication that to succeed, he had to take risks, step outside the boundaries of what he knew, into a world where everything was uncertain. But what does it really mean? Malik asked, his voice more forceful now. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" David smiled, as though Malik had finally asked the right question. "It's simple," he said. "You help me with a few key investments. I've got a vision, and you've got the drive. Together, we can make it happen. You've got the car already, you're already connected. This is your chance to step up, to claim your place in a world that's been waiting for you." Malik's heart raced as the weight of David's words sank in. Everything that had been hinted at, everything that had been veiled in charm and promises of success, was now laid bare. It was all about business, about using connections and leveraging opportunities to get ahead. It was the game that the rich and powerful played, a game Malik had never been a part of, but now he was being asked to join. "I'm not sure if I'm ready for all this," Malik said, his voice quieter now. filled with uncertainty. I don't know if this is the right way for me. David's smile faded just a little, but he didn't press the issue. Take your time, Malik, but don't wait too long. Opportunities like this don't come around often. The door is open, but it won't stay open forever. You're either in or you're out. Malik felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him. This wasn't just about a car or about money. It was about who he was going to become. The man sitting across from him, confident and polished, had built a life by taking risks, by making deals, by stepping outside the rules. And now Malik was being asked to join that world, to make a choice that could change everything. As he walked out of the office that day, the weight of the decision heavier than ever, Malik felt a sense of finality settle over him. He knew what he had to do. He had to choose his path, to decide whether he was going to embrace this new world of opportunity or walk away and hold on to the life he had known. It was a choice that would define him, one that would shape his future in ways he couldn't yet understand. The question was no longer whether he could handle it. It was whether he was willing to take that first step into the unknown, to leave behind everything he had ever known in pursuit of something greater. And as he stood on the threshold, ready to step into the world David had promised, Malik knew that whatever choice he made, there would be no going back.